There we go. I'd like to call to order the July 28, 2025 special meeting of the school board at 5:15 PM. Ms. Marcian, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Bell.
Here.
Mrs. Hancock.
Here.
Mr. Kuchert.
Here.
Mrs. Fairgrieve is absent today, for those of you watching. Mrs. McCabe.
Here.
Dr. Rich.
Here.
Mr. Lackner.
Here. That brings us to item B, the Pledge of Allegiance. It looks like we have no citizen comments. That brings us to item 3, our 4 action item. Can I have a motion to approve the District 303 personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kuchert and Mrs. McCabe. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Marcian, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Hancock.
Yes.
Mr. Kuchert.
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe.
Yes.
Dr. Rich.
Yes.
Mrs. Bell.
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes, the motion carries 6-0. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn the July 28, 2025 special meeting of the school board?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. McCabe and Mr. Kuchert. Ms. Marcian, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Kuchert.
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe.
Yes.
Dr. Rich.
Yes.
Mrs. Bell.
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock.
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes, the meeting is adjourned at 5:17 PM.
Okie dokie. It is 5:30 on the button, July 28th. I'd like to officially call to order the Business Services Committee meeting. Do we have any citizens comments? We do not have any citizens comments, so we are going to get right to this. We have a pretty robust agenda here today with a couple of different folks coming up to present. So excited to welcome folks to the table. We are going to go with item 2A, Mid-Valley Financial Report for June to start.
So Mid-Valley is reporting that their revenue continues to trend ahead of the prior year, and expenditures are consistent with the prior year as a percent of budget. They will have some additional summer payrolls as well as some possible audit adjustments that will impact their final numbers for the year.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll move around to item 2B, CUSD 303 Financial Report for June.
Okay, so tonight, we're presenting the actual pages of the financial report so that I can kind of walk through, and I'll give a little bit of explanation as to how the whole thing fits together, as well as a summary of how June looks as well. So we're going to start by looking at the detailed information, which is down a little bit there. Perfect. So this detailed information here in the middle is what you would normally expect of a financial report. It has the numbers, the revenue categories, and all of that. The first number column there, you'll see we have fiscal year 23 year to date, fiscal year 24 year to date, and then 25 year to date as well. I do want to point out that for the June report, these numbers are a little bit skewed because for fiscal year 23, it's the full year, including audit adjustments. It's the final numbers and for 24. But when you look at the fiscal year 25 numbers, it's only through June because we haven't been through the accrual and the audit yet. So that's why, if you look at those numbers, it's going to look a little bit off because you're not comparing apples to apples. Okay. Then at the end there, you'll see there's the fiscal year 25 annual budget. And that column on the far right is the percentage of budget, in this case, revenue that has been received. So now I kind of want to go up to the top. So that's all the bottom areas. There are totals for like total local revenue, state revenue, and all of that, which I'll get to in a second. So across the top there, you'll see those the three boxes. Those three boxes, and we kind of chose this format so that you could see the detail in the numbers, but then you could also see some of the totals and the items in case you're a visual person. So for the local revenue, you will see there that it does match down to the total of the local revenue below, and the percentage of budget 101.82 is also comes from that table below. So the local revenue, state revenue, federal revenue, that kind of gives you a snapshot of all the revenue and where they are as a percent of budget. The next area in that graph area, this area shows year over year. So you can look and see what it was like for the last 2 years and the current year. So it kind of gives you a good idea of how we're trending year over year versus the percent of budget at the top. Okay. So that's generally how that one works. Now, so for the revenue here, I will tell you that the overall revenue is trending very close to the prior year as a percent of budget. You can see that we're at 98.79% of budget. So if we can move down just a little bit there on the column there, keep going. Okay. So you'll see total revenue all the way on that right-hand column, 99.79% of budget. I compared it to last year and we were at 101.9% of budget last year as well. So we're trending pretty good. Okay. So generally, then at the bottom there, we have the revenue insight, and those are obviously words that explain the total. So this looks at the total. So any words down here in description is looking at the total number. So it's referencing the 235 million year-to-date amount, whereas all the other is detail. And this one is looking at the total revenue and showing you that it's 3.4% more than the amount last year. Okay. But again, all the details are in the numbers. The other things just highlight different ways of looking at the trends. Okay. All right, so we can go on to the expenditure. Expenditures are set up exactly the same way with the salaries and benefits there at the top. Purchase services and supplies and materials, those are the three main or largest expenditures that we have. Again, the burgundy boxes show where we are in relationship to the budget, and the graph below shows the trend year over year. And overall, the expenditures they're trending very close to the prior year as a percent of budget. Again, we're at 90.07%, while at the same time last year, we were at 90.44% of budget. So we're right on track. And there are no areas of concern at this time.
Thank you so much for that detailed report. So board, the spirit of that was when we were having discussion for our planning meeting, we were talking about maybe getting a little bit more detail as we go over these reports. Do we have any feedback, board?
I really appreciated, oh, I'm sorry, sorry. I really appreciated the way that was laid out. I think it's really going to be easier for the public to understand and see. At least I like seeing it with graphs and figures, and I really like how you laid it out. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I have a question because the federal government was holding money and then released it. Did that have any impact on our budget or our expenditures or our revenue?
No, I would say for this year, it hasn't had any impact on the budgeted amount of federal revenue has come in pretty close to where we expected it to be.
And that was specifically for this next coming year. But fortunately, they have released those funds.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you again for that detailed report. We appreciate it. Next item here is item 2C, and I believe we have a presentation for health and life safety bonds.
We do. We're excited about this presentation tonight. We also have a few new, a veteran voice in face in the crowd tonight. Dan Critta from Wold is in the crowd with us tonight. And we have a new member of our team, Elizabeth Hennessy she's the managing director and head of Midwest Public Finance team at Raymond James, and she'll be joining us at the table as we go through our health and life safety bonds presentation. And excited that Ms. Jennifer Porter, our new CFO, joining us for her first business services meeting and running it. So I'll hand it off to Jennifer and Amanda as they walk us through the first part of the presentation about D303 and some of the needs within our district. Jennifer, the floor is yours, or the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Tonight we revisit a topic that you requested more information on following the May presentation, long-term capital planning. Our goal tonight is not to make decisions. It's really to begin developing a shared understanding of the scope of our needs, what we've accomplished, and tools available to move forward. When we look at how we make decisions, the core values guide all of our planning and investment decisions. They're the foundation for how we think about stewardship, not just our buildings, but the student experience inside of them. When we look at our strategic priorities, we're looking at purposeful family and community engagement under effective collaboration by sharing our needs transparently and effective collaboration through responsible, transparent stewardship of resources. Long-range capital planning not only just talks about maintenance, but is trust, foresight, and alignment for our broader mission. There has been progress over the last few years. Since 2021, we've invested $38 million, but over $400 million is identified that is remaining. As systems age and costs rise, deferring action will only increase long-term challenges, but you'll see apparently in all of our buildings what that does. This discussion is direct response to the board's request in May to bring this topic forward, with both an update on capital needs and an overview of potential funding options. It's about aligning what we know, what we've done, and what remains, so that we can think strategically and responsibly about our next steps. To walk us through the scope of our facilities, what's been addressed, and what remains outside of the current plan, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda.
So the next couple of slides are going to mirror ones that you saw a few months back when we provided or presented the updated capital plan. Our portfolio is vast, and this extensive footprint in our community comes with a deep responsibility to maintain and care for all aspects of our facilities. So how do we know what needs to be done? In our facilities, it's not always at face value and not very apparent, or not always very apparent what needs to be done. So we utilize different resources to understand the needs of our facilities. Over the past 5 years or so, we've utilized different sources to help us understand those needs. First and foremost is our facilities assessment that was completed by Wold Architects. This identified items that are really in relation to the physical built environment. So roofs, parking lots, mechanical. We also have the Citizen Advisory Council. This was a community source of information and a committee that helped understand what the needs were in our buildings from a programmatical and educational standpoint. While they did address how we learn in our buildings and how we use our buildings, there were also items on this list that overlapped with our facility assessments, such as in our air conditioning in the gyms and community rooms. In addition, we have previously identified lots of items in safety and security, as well as other space allocation modifications, such as Haynes, Lincoln, and Foxbridge that we completed several years back. It should be noted if you total up these different sources, you'll see a number of over 400 million. It should be noted that we do have overlap in a lot of these categories, and those help us understand a lot of our priorities with these overlapping items from different sources. And we've been grateful that we've had the opportunity to start knocking off these items from these different sources. As Jennifer mentioned, over the last several years, we've spent millions of dollars on starting to address our roofs, our parking lots, and mechanical equipments, but as well as some of the items such as improving our LRC, providing access control to our buildings, and those major moving parts from Haynes, Lincoln, and Fox Ridge. So since 2021, over 38 million has been allocated towards those needs. And to break that even further, what does that look like over the course of the last 6 years? And this bar chart shows us how we have spent our capital funding over those years. And you can see a pretty aggressive increase, if you will, in year 23-24. And this is really as a result of when we had those sources from the facility assessment and the CAC that really were the guiding factors that help us understand what the needs were and how to intelligently spend the money within our buildings. So as a recap, we have about $32 million allocated in capital improvements over the next 5 years. It should be noted that this plan that was presented in May was a plan with the available funding that we had available. So we were able to prioritize our needs with a balance of building needs versus programmatical needs within the building. And as you see from this chart, it's distributed over the next 5 years. That capital plan is roughly 77% replacement and maintenance of our existing infrastructure, while the remaining 7.3 is an improvement in addition, with this 23% primarily being the AC project in our gyms and community rooms. And furthermore, this capital plan is broken out just to give you a snapshot of what that looks like. This is a breakdown of the different categories of how we are spending those monies.
All right. This slide highlights what's outside the scope of our capital plan, and it talks about things like building automation and accessibility improvements. It also talks about programmatic side. It reflects emerging needs as such space. So these items represent areas the district may want to explore in the future as part of long-term plan. So again, I'll reiterate, in May, the board asked us to return for more information on a look on health and life safety bonds and looking at more detail on funding strategies for our capital needs. To support that request, we've invited Elizabeth Hennessy, Managing Director of Raymond James, provide an overview of funding tools available to the district. Again, tonight's presentation is informational only. No decisions are being requested. I'll turn it over to Liz.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thank you for having me here tonight. It's nice to meet the board. Just a little quick background. I've worked with Illinois school districts over 30 years. After so many years, I don't say how many years, I just say over 30. And working on solutions to capital planning. Worked with many King County neighbors and College County neighbors. And I'm excited to meet with you tonight to talk about your opportunities and challenges for funding these capital projects that you just went over. Let's jump in. Okay, so purpose of today's meeting is really to review the current and potential mechanisms to fund your capital improvements. We're going to look at your outstanding bonds and debt limit, explain how non-referendum bonds like working cash bonds, like safety bonds, and referendum bonds differ. We're going to explain debt certificates and alternate bonds and other debt paid from the operating funds. And then we're going to provide tools to understand possible taxpayer impacts of each debt structure and challenges and opportunities. So school funding for capital projects, we really split it into two categories. The non-borrowing options. What can you afford from your current financial state? What's your fund balance? And more importantly, what is your fund balance policy? That amount that you want to keep in the fund balance, because as you know, your main source of revenue is property taxes, and you get those twice a year, yet you have to pay bills every single month. So you need to keep some in the bank. And the district's policy is 28 to 34% fund balance as a percent of the operating revenues. So when we look at that minimum, we want to make sure we don't go below that when we look at additional funds you could pledge towards your capital plan. The other source of non-borrowing is annual operating budget or pay-as-you-go capital. Many districts have a certain dollar amount they budget in annually to go to capital all over the district. And that amount, you know, it is typically 5 to 7 million. I don't know, Jen, how much you guys are able to budget, but you know, it's difficult because we're in an inflationary time and finding money to dedicate to capital is difficult when we also see the escalation on the capital side. Moving to borrowing options, we have two sources that are paid from an unlimited debt service tax levy, and that's referendum approved bonds and then life safety bonds. And this is a relatively new development I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. Then also there's non-referendum bonds that are paid from a limited debt service tax levy. That's part of the tax limitation law. So back when tax caps came to King County, that was 1991. 94, they said, you know what, this is rotten. Districts can't issue life safety bonds or working cash bonds. So we're coming up with this mechanism called the debt service extension base. And that relates to the amount of principal and interest that you paid all the way back in 94. So the tax cap law was amended to say, okay, well, if you want to extend that same levy that you had for debt in 94, you can issue bonds as long as the payment doesn't go over that amount. In 2009, they amended it to add a CPI factor to that. So that's referred to your debt service extension base. We currently have 2 bond issues outstanding using that source of revenue. So this does. And then the last type of bonds is alternate bonds and debt certificates. Those do not have a separate levy. They are paid from operating funds. So again, there's no tax increase, but you need to very carefully budget those payments so that they fit within your operating budget. District has a big area and a very great EAV, just under $4 billion. And you have about 42.7 million of bonds outstanding. So under the Illinois statutory formula for unit districts, you have a debt limit of 500,766,456. Okay, so let's go then to your working cash limit. This relates to those non-referendum bonds paid from the DSEP. That's a separate statutory formula, and that limit is 85 million point four. So your limits are very large. The two outstanding bonds you have, as I mentioned, are working cash. These are working cash bonds that were used to pay for capital projects. They weren't just going into the fund balance. The monies initially went into the working cash fund, then were transferred to that Fund 60 for capital projects and then spent on the capital projects needed. So in 2017, the district issued around 20 million, and in 2024, you issued about 25 million. So these bonds are callable. And just to give you a reference, municipal bonds are different than a mortgage in that you can refinance your mortgage anytime. You cannot do that with municipal bonds. You have to wait till the call date, which is typically 9 to 10 years out. We're coming right up on that call date for the 2017 bonds. That's January 1 of 26. So those are callable, and we looked at refunding those for some savings. And the savings right now are very small. As you probably know, interest rates are up. We've come off of inflationary, the Fed increasing rates to fight inflation. And so rates are higher now than they were in 2017. But there are still some small savings, 65,000. But we would not recommend moving forward on this refunding because we want to see savings well over 3% as a present value savings as a percent of refunded bonds. Right now, we're only at 1.6%. We'll continue to watch this for you. If rates come down and we have the Fed decrease rates, that may offer an opportunity. But right now, there's no savings.
Can I stop you for just one moment? Just on
Absolutely.
that topic. Do you, and I know no crystal ball here, but do you anticipate that we would see a decrease in the rates in the next year or so as the time? Is that what you're thinking? I mean,
we watch the CPI come out monthly, and right now we're trending just under 3%. It's not moving as much as I think the Fed would like to see it come down to justify another rate decrease or more than one rate decrease. I do think we're going to have a rate decrease here before the end of the year. That's what our economists are saying. But they're really in the wait and see stance. The Fed is extremely nervous about the tariff situation impacting inflation. So to the extent that gets resolved and those tariff agreements get settled and things calm down, maybe we will start to see more decreases next year. So I'm cautiously optimistic we will see lower rates. So the non-referendum bonds paid from the debt service extension base, there's two types. There's working cash fund bonds. Those require a petition period and a public hearing. Funding bonds, those require also a petition period and public hearing, and the use is more for paying off an obligation against the district. So if, for example, if you have debt certificates out, and you're feeling the pinch in the operating funds, you want to refund them with funding bonds, that would be a use of funding bonds. But most districts like you use that working cash fund bond option if possible, because it's the most flexible. So your debt service extension base is currently 3,504,358 as of the 2025 levy year. Okay. And again, this goes back to the tax cap back to 94. So that's good. Some districts have no debt service extension base at all, and they can't issue any of these types of bonds, like Jen's former district. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll see that 3,504,358. You see 25 levy year, 2.9% was our last CPI for 25. That's the increase you'll be able to levy this fall when you work on your tax levy. So you have in 25 levy year a debt payment of 3,288,813. That is the amount of principal and interest due on those two bonds, 2017 and 2024. So if we do the subtraction, you see in the green box, the remaining capacity is 215,545. The far right column shows the tax rate for debt, which is very low, 8 cents. So if we go look at the full number of years the debt is outstanding, which goes out to 2043, we see the amount of remaining capacity in that green box is really minimal. So when we talk about the debt service extension base as a source for additional bonds to fund your capital projects, it's really not available back in 2043. So here it is graphically. The blue bars represent the payments on those non-referendum bonds. The red line represents that debt service extension base. And the green line represents the debt service extension base with the CPI increases. We very conservatively assumed 1.5%. The Fed wants our CPIs to be around 2. So if they manage things correctly, we may see a little more increase. So as the DSEB grows, there's going to be more capacity for these type of bonds, but it's not going to be anytime soon. I would say if that growth continues for 5 to 10 years, we'll probably look at doing some sort of issuance at that time. But again, nothing of the magnitude of the capital plan that you're looking at right now. So summarizing the non-referendum limited bonds paid from the debt service extension base, the benefits, it allows the issuance of working cash fund bonds, which can address capital needs, does not require referendum unless a valid petition is received, does not increase debt service levy beyond CPI increase. The challenges are that the district has 2 outstanding bond issues that use up the majority of that bond capacity at the current time. So here's Public Act 1030591. This became law last June of 24. So this allows that issuance of fire prevention and safety bonds without referendum. So this is a real opportunity for Illinois school districts. For years, people have been proposing legislation to get fire prevention and safety bonds outside of the tax cap, and it was finally successful last year. So we're going to look at some options for those life safety bonds next. Some other things in that bill: voter approved bonds are no longer subject to the debt limit, and the repayment period, which used to be 20 years, has been extended to a maximum of 30 years. The last bullet talks about voter approval is not required if you're building a new building that expands pre-K or kindergarten facilities within the district. It's to try to address the governor's requirement to provide these services by 2025. However, there's no funding attached to it. So you don't have to ask the voters for it, but you don't get any money. So examples of life safety bonds are as follows. And I'll just mention overall, life safety bonds are meant to improve safety and security within school districts, but they're more of a replacement for things that are older. Dan, of course, can speak to this too, but it's not like we can just overhaul our HVAC and go geothermal, right? Life safety bonds is not going to pay for that. They will pay for replacement of your unit ventilators and the various components that are not working anymore in your schools from that point of view. So just looking at these examples, anything related to security, cameras, intercom, glass, secured entry, exterior lighting, replacement of equipment past its useful life. Boilers, unit ventilators, air handlers, lighting, smoke alarms, door hardware, doors, intercom, fire alarms, plumbing. It does not provide air conditioning for buildings that do not currently have AC. Anything related to energy savings, if it can be paid back in 20 years or less. Anything related to building envelope, allowing any, where water's coming through, tuck pointing, leaky windows. Anything related to building structure failures, like replacing rusted or deteriorated structural elements. I don't even know what these things are. Lintels, roof decking, concrete. Paving, sidewalk, playgrounds, parking lots. Now, those tend to be a big problem, especially with the hot and cold like here in Illinois. You do have to have a separate public hearing though if you're doing a parking lot. Anything related to impeding egress, tripping hazards, sticky doors, exit signs, anything related to fire safety, doors, glazing, walls, fire clog, asbestos, typically flooring and pipe replacement. ADA, this was kind of interesting. Jen and I were talking. You get one drinking fountain, one ADA toilet for girls and one for boys, and one entry into the building per building.
It doesn't matter how big the building is.
Apparently not. Just gotta go further, kind of silly. So, I mean, that's life safety. And then there are some places that have done building replacements under life safety. It's very rare. That building has to be falling in. Yeah. The process of life safety bonds is a process. It's the architect provides life safety amendments detailing project and costs by building. So maybe you guys have a head start on that. Great. The Board of Education reviews and approves these life safety amendments. The ROE, Regional Office of Education, reviews and approves the amendments and then sends them to the ISB State Board. The turnaround depends on how busy they are. Not 1 week. It's not 1 week. It's usually at least 3 to 4 weeks, up to 2 months. They are really busy right now because of this new law. Lots of schools are taking each other. So ISB reviews and approves the life safety amendments. Yeah, ISB's the holdup usually. Public hearing on bond issue requires a minimum 7-day notice in the newspaper. It's just a public hearing. And then the life safety resolution may be approved by the board, a minimum of 7 days after the public hearing, then the bonds are issued. So altogether, you're looking at, 3 to 4 months from soup to nuts to get your money.
Can I ask one question on that? So I assume when you send a proposal to the Regional Office of Education, to ISB, that there's going to be more than one item in it. Do they reject it or accept it as a whole, or do they ever return it but say, we have questions about this one item?
They often, first of all, the amendments are building by building. So each building gets its own set of amendments. So they're unrelated. One may be approved, one may not. They often have questions and they're going to reach out to your architects and get more detail. Like if they want to see cost estimates, especially, we're a big state and things downstate cost a lot less than things up here. So I think they're trying to take those things into consideration, but there's a lot of back and forth. Okay, so these are examples of 40 million of life safety bonds. Again, just examples paid over 10, 15, and 20 years. And 40 million is just an example that, is a rough in relationship to some of the projects identified in your capital plan. I like repaying them over 10 years only because you get that life safety survey done again every 10 years. However, that may be, too much, too quick. So in this example, 10 years results in annual payments of about $5 million. We're looking at an interest rate of 4.10% at today's rates. plus a 25 basis point cushion. We always include that cushion right now because we've had a very volatile market this year. Want to be conservative. So the tax impact would be 12.8 cents based on your EAV. For the owner of a $300,000 home, that's $118 a year for 10 years. For a $450,000 home, that's $182. And $450,000, according to Zillow, is kind of the average sale value right now in St. Charles. And then for a $600,000 home over 10 years, it's $246. We do the same thing for the 15-year repayment and the 20-year repayment. Important to notice, the longer time we take to pay it off, the payment goes down, but the interest cost over time goes up. So on the 15-year, we've got an all-in true interest cost of about 4.58%, just under 10-cent tax rate impact, 89, 138, 6, and then the 20-year is 3.2 million a year, just under 5% on the rate, 8 cents, $76 on the $300,000 home, 118 on the $450K home, and $15 on $600,000. So we did these options for you separately, just so you can see how the spreadsheet works. So here's the 40 million over 10 years. You've seen this chart up to the green remaining limited tax capacity and the current 8 cents that you've got on the tax rate for debt. Just mentioning here, this is the tax rate for debt. This is not the tax rate for the operating part of the levy. So if we did 10 years repayment for 40 million life safety bonds, you see that annual average payment of around 5 million, and that increases that tax rate by 12.8 cents. After 10 years, it drops off. We did level debt service. We think that's the most conservative way to do it, so the payments are equal per year. Here's a graphic of it. The blue bars again are your working cash bond payments. Then the red line is the debt service extension base, the green line debt service extension base plus 1.5% inflation. And then the purple bars are those life safety bond payments. For the 15-year, we're going out longer. The annual payments are $3,785,000 on average, about a 10-cent impact. So then you see those homeowner impacts. Now it's out for 15 years. And you can see the bar graph, how that works. Next is the 20-year repayment. So in this case, we're going out to the year 2044. The annual payments are $3,244,000, and that's the 8.3 cent increase. So, you know, the payment goes down, but the total interest cost over the life of the debt does go up. And there's the picture of that. So just again, the benefits of life safety bonds, you have a payable from unlimited debt service tax levy. It's a very good security. District has a very strong bond rating. So that would be very attractive. Does not require a referendum. Issuing debt and completing critical life safety work now will reduce cost escalation on these projects in the future. And I'm sure Dan can speak to that too, if you want him to. That escalation has really been something many districts are struggling with. So getting things done is important to offset future costs. The challenges, this will increase the debt service tax levy, and not all capital needs can be addressed by life safety bonds. So there's many things that fall outside that. Okay, next we're going to turn to debt paid from operating funds. Debt certificates.
Can I interrupt you? For a
Absolutely.
minute?
Let's go back to life safety bonds.
What percentage of the capital plan backlog would qualify under the life safety bond program if we chose to take that kind of debt?
Yeah, we started going down that route and exploring what that would be. I don't have an exact number for you, but there is a substantial amount of our, specifically just the facility assessment that was completed by Wold. A substantial amount of that would potentially qualify. Now, we would have to go through the process of state to make sure, so we would not be able to give you a definite number at this point. But, to recap one of the slides here, all our mechanical equipment, we have so much dated out, past its life, mechanical equipment, parking lots. I can follow up with a better estimate or percentage of our needs out there.
I think that'd be valuable.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Other questions?
So I wanted to understand the impact on the taxpayers. So there is not a referendum that's required, obviously, but there is a tax impact that you illustrated for, each value of home. Is that just an automatic increase on their property taxes
It is.
that would be built in? Okay.
Yes, the board would have to pass a resolution authorizing the sale of life safety bonds, and then the tax is extended automatically by the county clerk. Having been on the board when we paid off North High School, that was a huge, and we were able, I don't know what the legal terms are, but we were able to give back to the taxpayers. We lowered their tax. So the sooner you get done, hopefully future boards will also see how that can, if they're in a good situation, can positively impact the taxpayer. I'm looking at some of our needs when it comes to field houses and culinary. I'm not seeing that those would be accepted as life safety. So those might be, that's a different kind of conversation, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the items that are currently on our capital plan, as an example, are culinary rooms. If we were able to utilize health, life safety bonding for those parking lots, those roofs, mechanical system, it does free up a little bit of our available funding to do more of those programmatical improvements that we are desiring in this district. And to follow up on your previous questions regarding how much of our current, I just pulled up a few examples as a snapshot. We have over $20 million that was identified in just concrete and asphalt work. We had another almost $40 million in just roofing projects identified in our facility assessment. And I will note that our facility assessment was 2021, 22, and that was a 10-year outlook. So as we continue to move on in our timeline of years, we continue to add to that list, and that's not identified here.
Anybody else?
Okay. So other debt that can be used for some of those other types of projects is a category of debt that's repaid from operating funds, debt certificates and alternate bonds. Debt certificates are paid from general operating funds of the district. Proceeds may only be used for capital projects. No separate bond and interest tax levy. So you have to budget it within your operating funds. It is subject to the debt limit. No requirement for public hearing or petition period. You can just issue them. Alternate bonds are a little different. They're also paid from operating funds, but they have a backup pledge of a bond and interest tax levy. So when you issue them, the tax levies go on the tax roll with the county clerk in each year. As your budget provides the funding to make the annual debt service payment, you abate that levy. So there's net no increase to the taxpayers. Now, to issue those alternate bonds, you need to have a petition period and a public hearing. Investors think alternate bonds, they're generally viewed a bit more favorable as a security, again, because of that backup tax levy. It does take more paperwork, though, and more processes. Here's an example of 10 million debt certificates repaid from operating funds. So if you paid these back over 10 years, the payment would be $1,260,000, and you would have to budget that each year within your operating funds. So the benefit of operating fund debt is it does not increase taxes beyond the regular operating tax increases allowed under the tax limitation law, does not require referendum. The challenge is the district must carefully budget the debt service payments from the operating funds annually. And uncertainty regarding school funding in the future may make those debt service tax payments less affordable. So, we're seeing pressure on the title funds. We're seeing pressure on state funding. Those aren't your biggest revenue sources, but they're certainly substantial part of your picture. So those are things we want to keep in mind as we look at operating fund debt. Now we're going to talk briefly about referendum. Here's the referendum history from District 303 from the State Board of Elections. And the last time the district had a successful referendum to fund capital was March of 2002. Did have a successful referendum for increasing the limiting rate, which is for operations, in April of 2003. But since then, there's not been additional capital bonding authorized. When we get back in the 90s, they only say rate increase or bond. They don't tell us how much it was for.
So we haven't tried a referendum since 2009.
Correct. Regarding referendum bonds, the benefit is that the ballot language provides a description. You can explain to the community exactly what we're doing. We see really long ballot questions these days because, those who don't have time to go on the district's website, they're going to read that question and get their information there. Larger projects can be addressed in a shorter time frame to suppress that construction cost escalation. You have up to 5 years to issue referendum bonds. So that's a nice thing. You don't have to issue them all at once. That can help reduce the tax impact. But, again, the sooner you get the work done, the better for cost escalation. And the thing about referendum bonds, voters may like that increase is only temporary. Once the bonds are paid off, we're talking about the tax rate drops, that goes away. You have to go back to the voters for a subsequent question. The challenge is that there would likely be a tax increase for a referendum bond because you don't have any referendum debt outstanding. Everything's been paid off. So very small amount of debt outstanding. We see some of these huge referendums. If you read the newspaper, you'd see Indian Prairie just passed $480 million. And that was a tax decrease because their old bonds were just about to be paid off. So they said, we're coming to you with a new bond, but because the old bonds are getting paid off, we're going to only take a portion of that old payment dedicated to the new bond. So it was a net decrease. The other challenge is that a referendum bond is just one time, after it's paid off, the building's done, it's usually paid off over 20 plus years. Your building needs come up again sooner than that. So you have to go back to the voters. Any questions, comments?
Well, the biggest challenge of a referendum is that it has to pass. As you can see, that isn't a sure thing.
It's a ton of effort for administration, board. It's a great undertaking, but be done. Lots of information on that. It's I think we had actually one of our most successful referendums in Illinois in 2024 November. That was a huge election, as you know. That brought out a ton of voters. So, and bonds passed
2-to-1 to tax rates in November 24. So we're out from that, but it's recent history. Next thing I want to talk about also has an R word attached to it because it's a county-wide referendum. It's a county school facility sales tax. So the sales tax avoids increasing property taxes. That's the main benefit. It's a different type of tax, but it requires a county-wide referendum. So the county school facility sales tax law was enacted in 2007 and has been amended several times. It's based on similar legislation in Iowa, where now the law is just they required that sales tax for all going to all school districts. It allows schools to submit a ballot question to the voters to implement a county sales tax strictly for school facility purposes. You'll see now the law has been amended. If you put it in the ballot language, you can use it for school resource officers and mental health professionals. So that was an amendment to the law. You don't have to ask the question that way, but you can, and then use the funding for those additional services. Otherwise, it has to be purely for facilities, either direct pay-as-you-go facility upkeep or leverage or an alternate bond issue. So of the 102 counties in Illinois, 80 have voted on this tax. 57 have successfully implemented that safety sales tax. The district's share of county facility sales tax estimate at 1%, if you went for the 1%, you can go for 0.25% increments. In that 1% would generate $9 million per year at today's estimate. And sales tax generally increase each year, so that would probably increase in future years. But if you were to issue a bond repaid over 20 years with a payment of $9 million, that's $89.2 million for District 303 if you were to leverage all of it, just as an example. So school facility purposes, acquisition, development, construction, rehabilitation, improvements, architectural planning, installation, consisting of building structures and durable equipment are all payable from the sales tax. As I mentioned, it can be paid by bonds or just pay as you go. So that's the bonds are alternate bonds, no referendum. Petition period and public hearing are required, not subject to the debt limit. 40-year maximum payback. You have to demonstrate coverage of the debt at 1.25 times. We did take that in consideration on that $89 million. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also include school resource officers and mental health professionals. So what is the sales tax? Everything that municipal and county sales taxes tax except cars, trucks, and ATVs. No boats and RVs, no mobile homes, unprepared food, i.e. stuff you buy at the grocery store, not subject to this tax. Drugs, including over-the-counter and vitamins, farm equipment and parts, farm inputs, and services are not taxed. So in conjunction with the Kane County ROE, a study was done to find out in Kane County what % of sales tax is paid by Kane County residents versus people not living in Kane County. And the results were interesting. I thought 46 cents on every dollar comes from people outside Kane County, driving through on the highways, getting gas. You know, a lot of this tax is applied at gas stations and stuff yourself.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, I'm nervous to ask because I'm afraid I should know this already, but to do something like this, I assume it wouldn't just be a decision that our board makes, right? If it's a Kane County, that it involves the boards of the other districts also? Is that true?
Yes, so what
Okay.
has to happen is every school district in King County School Board would need to approve, or at least school boards representing 51% of the enrollment in King County would have to approve a resolution. So this has been discussed at the ROE level. You guys, E3.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to understand it all. So thank you
U
for clarifying.
46 would mean the enrollment, 51% of the enrollment. And the sales tax follows student. So that 9 million is based on the number of students in King County. Yeah. So the sales tax doesn't come from any students living in Page County, which you also have some students from.
Do we know the status of the surrounding counties? Meaning, does DuPage or DeKalb or any of these surrounding counties?
None
have
of
they
the
voted
collar
this?
counties have done it. They've talked about it a lot. McHenry's talked about it a lot. So has Will County. It's the counties that seem to have do this most successfully are counties where there's a public university. That helps because you have students buying a lot of stuff that are going to leverage this tax, right? So Champaign County, DeKalb tried it and did not pass. McLean County just did it with Bloomington Normal, where ISU is. So I wish I had my map slide so you could see all the counties that have done it. But the impetus for this is really to take the pressure off the property tax and bring the schools up to code and accomplish the capital projects needed. Kane County just had a referendum that failed miserably, but we were not part of that. So the likelihood of a service tax in the near future is pretty unlikely to pass. It is difficult. It is not easy. It takes all boats rowing in the same direction, especially with county school facility tax. And I'm aware that public safety sales tax did not pass. But like any referendum, county facility sales tax, you have to communicate with your voters. What does this mean for you? It means you get X, Y, and Z paid by sales tax. It means an extra $1 for every $100 you spend at Costco. It means you can use that money to abate property taxes on other debt. That's been used in different districts too, because every school district has a different debt situation. Some have a ton of bonds outstanding, some have very little, like you guys. So it's coming up with your message. What is this going to do for the students of D303? What is it going to cost? And everybody communicating to their voters at the same time.
So quick question for me. You mentioned some counties that had successfully done this. You mentioned some counties that have unsuccessfully so. Can you cite a couple of reasons why you believe it was successful other than you mentioned larger universities, things of that nature? I'm just curious. It seems like you have to, as you mentioned, get a lot of people aligned, multiple districts within the county who may or may not need something like this or may not want to absorb it. I think for me, I'm typically resistant to raising property taxes because we're representing those folks, our constituents in the district. This seems a little bit more appealing, but I'm getting a little bit of mixed messaging as to the likelihood of something like this being approved.
Right. Factors that I think help is having fewer school districts. Kane County does not have that many school districts, and they're all unit districts. These referendums often don't pass the first time. It takes 1, 2, or 3 times. But why does it take so many times? Again, you've got to have everybody on the same bus, meaning communicating and for it. If you have one school board like DeKalb, it's an example of why DeKalb failed last referendum. DeKalb Unit District 428, the biggest district, was for it. Sycamore wanted it on the ballot, needed it desperately, but this is board. Boards are the ones who put it on the ballot. This board was not standing up for it. They were reluctant. And so, you know, it didn't pass. You've got to have all cylinders working together. Different messages, different constituents, different needs. So for example, a district with a ton of bonds out might say, if we get this sales tax, we're going to reduce your property taxes. You have another who says, we're going to use this instead of issuing new working cash bonds or life safety bonds. So it's just crafting the message and following through on what you say you're going to do. I think Kane County, of all the collar counties, has one of the best chances to pass this. East Aurora wants it. West Aurora wants it. U46 already passed a referendum. You know, we're not sure what their thoughts would be, but getting everybody on the same page is really critical. And given that you don't have a ton of elementary districts and a ton of high school districts that all have to coordinate together, I think that makes a big difference.
I think one fact that you're pointing out here, that 46% of our revenues or retail spending comes from outside of the county residents, is really important if we were to go this direction. I'm not saying we will. I'm saying that that is something that I think makes it clear that that wouldn't necessarily be a big burden on all of the residents that were passing it, you know, through passerby. So I think that's a great point. I'm really glad that you put that up there.
We also did this in Phoenix, but the tax was on tourism. And it was something that was, you know, really appealing to voters, but tourism's so huge there, right? So on hotels and on rental cars and everything else. And so you can keep property taxes low, and the people coming in from out of state were taxed, and it was easy to pass, but this is slightly different, but.
Sense. I'm wondering, Aurora is part of maybe Will County and DuPage. For U46, I think is Cook, DuPage, and Kane. I mean, so we'd have to have a lot. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's a great concept. The Kane County tax, that just failed miserably. Was the messaging good? The no messaging was really good. So it takes a lot of work. I mean, you're not kidding. It takes a lot of work to make sure that everybody understands what the impact is and where it will go. And I'm going to be really frank, having most of my career in central Illinois, people did not want a flat, I'm not saying the right thing. People who lived north of 80 did not want to pay for schools in southern Illinois or central Illinois. So we were always struggling with tax referendums that were statewide in concept. I'm not sure how a community feels if we have a sales tax, that money won't go to just D303. It could go to Elgin. It could go to Bartlett. So that's the part. Actually, it'll follow your students. So that $9 million a year is based on your Kane County enrollment. So it will go to D303, but only if it's passed in Kane and not DuPage, only to the extent of your Kane County enrollment, which is the biggest, right? Kane County is the biggest. So it's not quite what I meant. Oh, sorry. No, but I'm not sure I'm going to be saying it accurately. So if I go to Costco and I end up whatever, the very minimal amount that it's paid, but that money might be divided up by all the school districts. My feeling, these are the arguments that I've heard throughout my education career, is I don't want to pay for somebody else's student. I want to pay, if I'm going to pay, I want it to be for my student. So a referendum that D303 passes, it's just for D303.
That's right. That's right. 'Cause
Sales
you're looking
tax
at
could
all
go
the
to
King
any
County
school.
schools. So it is, it go to the Auroras, to, you know, Carpentersville, just based on the student. I got it.
So it takes an enormous amount of work to pass referendum. And it takes years. So it's not something you can just ask the superintendents, okay, work together, guys, and let's get this going. It takes a really committed organization to do.
And that's really exactly my last slide. I think we've really identified through our discussion, these benefits and challenges. So, you know, the benefit is certainly it takes the weight off the property tax. It's available for pay-as-you-go capital, so you could have a bigger budget to get ahead of some of these capital projects sooner rather than later. You can pledge it to a financing challenge. It requires a majority of King County school districts representing 51% of the enrollment, hopefully more, to place it on the ballot. And then it requires coordination of the King County schools to educate voters. What does it mean to you? How much is it going to cost? And what are you going to get for it? So that's all I got. Sorry, I've been talking a long time.
It was very detailed. Thank you for that. Board, do we have any questions or comments before we move on? Well, Dr. Gordon, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just a quick next steps. One of the pieces that Amanda will bring back was the question by Mr. Lackner around what would fit in there and would it exceed 40? What would that number look like? So we'll make sure we bring that back. And then for just seeking some feedback from administration, would you want more feedback on health and life safety? Would you want more feedback on any aspect of tonight's presentation? I think one of the interesting pieces for me, just from a historical piece, in recognizing where we're at on our facilities, was understanding the last time the board or the district passed a referendum. It starts making a little bit more sense how we're in that 400 million plus need for our facilities that Amanda and our schools face every day. So just getting from the board, what would you like the next steps from administration outside of what Mr. Lackner's asked of what would that list look like? What are those needs? And then dollars associated with those needs.
I think I'd like to know if we didn't do anything that was just presented, what does that mean? So I think that's important also, is if the people at this table thought, not okay with any of this, right? I don't think a referendum would be successful. I don't want to raise taxes. then what? And I think that's important, like a clear picture of what this looks like if no action is taken would be great.
That's a wonderful question and insight. Thank you so much. And I think it's really important as we talk about these different options to really reframe how we view it. To not do something in fear that something won't pass doesn't suit us well if it is of interest of the board. And I'm sorry, talking off the cuffs here, but if someone's not comfortable with our money spent on sales tax here, it's like, oh, our money might go to another district. Well, reframe it. Like, you mean people who are shopping at Geneva Commons, our school district is going to benefit from those sale purchases outside of our city. So I think, to the point of, whatever we decide as a collective group, what our next steps are to help support our facilities. I think really understanding how we frame that mindset, not only from administration, the board, but then also how we portray it to our community is going to be critical. And yeah, I would love to be able to show more in depth what the state of our facility is if there is no action, because we are not at that, we don't have that option anymore. And I would be happy to bring forth more information about our backlog, our deferred maintenance, how many roofs are past their lives, how many mechanical systems are past their age.
And that's super helpful because the flip side to that, right, is if we were to choose one of these options, and I want to be able to defend it with confidence and clarity, right? And so that's what it helps me to do, is that I do worry about the safety of students or the impact on education if we're not doing these things. So kind of knowing that helps to, one, better understand how urgent the need is, but two, to be able to have some confidence in defending those decisions. So thank you.
I think to your point, people are willing to give if they know exactly what it's for. Not everybody, but most people. And also to your point, I love the idea of reframing.
Four,
Okay,
all four passed.
knock on wood. So it starts with us. Has to be a community one. There's a lot that goes into it. Feet on the ground, messaging, all of that. And the board it has to be a 7.
You always do such a great job of giving us like the real deal. What is the status of these facilities? And so if I could just add on to Dr. Rich's comment, if you could also include, oftentimes you'll say it's 8 years beyond its life, it's 10 years beyond its life, 12 years. I think that will really help to illustrate the current state of our fleet, so to speak, and what is of critical importance, and certainly if there's any safety ramifications.
Absolutely. Yeah. As a department, we actually are working on just asset management improvements in general, and we're currently trying to compile a better inventory of our assets out there so that I can more intelligently provide that information in real-time data for that.
Amanda, are you thinking August or September? I want to allow you to make the decision. So we have the best information for Dan. So what we'll do, instead of putting you on the spot like I just did, I'm going to take that question back. And we're as committee chairs, we'll swing in and talk to you about when would be the most advantageous to you, and to ensure that Dr. Rich's request and Mr. Lackner's request is met with all of the due diligence that it's going to need.
Can we also maybe, if there's any grants out there that can help with any ADA compliance or any safety things be looked at, because maybe it's out there, maybe it's not, I don't know, but that's another option that does not involve any resources from the community.
Absolutely. And kind of use this as a time to shout out that we actually just recently did that. I might have mentioned this already, but we have just been awarded some combat incentive funding. So we had millions of dollars in our assessment identified as LED replacements needed in our building, but we're finding it at almost zero cost to our district to make these improvements over the next couple of months. We'll be rolling that out at 7 of our buildings.
Congratulations.
Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Those would be some other awesome points to add. However we determine this report needs to be delivered, I think those types of cost savings is really important for us to illustrate for the community and the taxpayer that we're being really resourceful with the available funds out wherever they need. So thank you very much.
So I heard your position is that the no additional debt is something that administration would not recommend, or would phrase differently, some additional debt is going to come back as a recommendation from administration. I think it's important for us to think about the differences that Public Act 1030591 creates for the board. This is an opportunity for the board as representatives of the community to take on debt that community has to pay on. The referendum bonds allow the opportunity for the community to weigh in. One of the things for us to consider is there are limitations both in type and in terms associated with the life safety debt versus the referendum debt. It's very important for us to understand the cost of debt differences between the two and what part of the program for the community could be filled by either. And while I think it's important for us to recognize new opportunities for debt burden, we have a low debt load, and this new act allows us as a board to take action that we didn't have the authority to take previously. At the same time, the entirety of Dr. Gordon's $400 million identified need can't be covered by this act. And so I think it's important for you to say in whatever report you bring back, here's the list of needs for the district. Here are the ones that could be paid for with life safety, here are the additional ones that would require a vote referendum. All of the items that are in the Life Safety Act could be funded through a vote referendum. And so I don't want to shortchange the discussion of when D303 goes back to talk to the voters. If we haven't done that since 2009, that is a long time. There's been some substantial change in the allocation of operating funds towards capital improvement over the last several years, and that's had a positive impact on facilities. And while I appreciate administration's position, there is a broader conversation about debt and debt load for us to have. My recommendation is to include both potential debt types.
I sincerely appreciate you bringing that to the table so that the board in the community has that wide perspective of both. Because I so appreciate what you said around the health, life safety. There are, as Liz pointed out, there are a number of things on that list that we need done. But that is not our comprehensive list. When we think back to CAC, when the community came in and evaluated our facilities, yes, were there many of those things, but there are many other items on there as referenced, our culinary labs, those types of pieces around enhancements to the educational experience. Those will not be on health life safety. Think of health life safety as all the things that you really don't want to pay for in your house, but you have to. It's the roofs, it's your driveway, it's all of those pieces that are behind, oftentimes the wall or on top of the ceiling, but that have to be done. Unfortunately, in D303, we are in a state where we do need to do a lot of that work right now. That's the work that when I meet with Amanda and now Jennifer, those are the pieces that are coming to us. Just last month or a couple weeks ago, the board took, I had to give emergency authorization to Amanda to approve something that the board came back and approved officially for us. But it's those things that are starting to fail. The reason we're not at Lincoln tonight is one of the aspects that was not done in the Lincoln remodel was an additional piece that failed. We're hoping to have that back online on Thursday, but that's the state of where we're at within just the mechanical, the roofs, the new pavement. We do see some of our stairs who are crumbling. So that's why administration strongly supports this, but I just so agree with what Mr. Lackner asked for is a wide breadth of both. What can they do? What are they available to? And the absolute impact financially from, and maybe ultimately long-term, the board terms, there is a multi-pronged strategy to approach this, to do some of this work in two different types of buckets. So we will bring that back. I'll speak with the committee co-chairs and Amanda on her timing. My gut would be that we should be thinking probably September, that we would bring that back because of the ask. If I'm reading facial expressions, which I'm generally decent at, that will be the next piece, next time you hear from us, unless the board needs some other things in between.
One comment I
yeah.
want to make about your referencing Lincoln. When we're making emergency style repairs or things that come to the last minute and then they're because we've gone past their lifespan. Oftentimes, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes when we're doing repairs like that, they have extra costs in it because we're having things done on a Sunday or because we have to manage the emergency. Is that a correct assumption? So us putting it off is then also costing us more and more.
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to settle for something that may not have been quite what we wanted. You know, what's available on the shelf? How can we make this repair right now? Is this just a repair, or if we could have planned for an actual replacement, we could avoid further repairs down the line. So absolutely, being more proactive than reactive will set us in a better stage going forward. Thank you.
Liz, thank you so much for your presentation. Dan, thank you for continuing to support us and being here tonight for this presentation.
Okay, I think we're going to move right along to the next item here. We are at item 2D, fiscal year 25-26 Mid-Valley final draft.
So the Mid-Valley budget was presented in May, and the budget has since been updated to reflect an increase in Fund 10 bottom line of 33,517 and a reduction in Fund 20 of $50,000. So Mid-Valley is requesting that you accept the draft budget as presented today.
Any discussion or questions, folks? Seeing none, we will move that to the consent agenda for next month's meeting, or next week's meeting. Okay, next, item 2E, referral GPS.
Sorry, I pushed the microphone that clearly has a line through it. Yes, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you having me here this evening to talk with you about Referral GPS. This is a tool that the district has actually had for 3 years. We are using this tool currently and wanted to make sure that we brought it to your attention due to the cost to make sure that this is something that we want to continue to support. It is a tool that we have some very accurate data on as far as how it's being used to help our families connect with mental health services. We are finding that through our staff members, we have in the past school year, 5,845 searches that were done on behalf of families. And that's wonderful. I think what is even more powerful about this tool, though, is that for our families and students alike, they can actually also access this tool on their own. So they have an option to go onto the tool at any time through our district website and access the tool if they are looking themselves for resources in our community and nearby communities to help support their mental health needs and well-being. What we're finding is that we're able to help support for families who also have low cost or no cost needs. So it's not only nearby, convenient, helpful for a family who may be in a crisis situation and not able to go through school, or perhaps because for their own need, they would rather not go through the school district. They want to be able to access this. It's really co-supported and designed in that way intentionally. This is a tool that we would like to continue and recommend that we continue using the database. We want to continue to make sure that it's offered in more than one way for our families. Is a really important part about helping us help our families stay connected, and also to help our families really make sure that they recognize that as a school, we support what is it within the 4 walls of the school district in terms of school-based mental health supports, and that we have to do a handoff and help families make those connections out in the community. So it really helps us define that and create those parameters, and yet be able to provide families with resources so that they can access what is important for their needs. So with this, with your approval, it is 34,500. We would ask that we're not taking a vote on this until the next board meeting, but ask that you would move forward for us to approve that for another year.
This is a K-12 resource, right?
It is. Oh, it could be used for pre-K as well. Yes, yes, thank you.
How are we communicating that this exists to families? I've been a parent in the district for years now, and I did not know that this existed. And so I feel like this is an amazing platform for families to connect with all of these needs that are out there, but don't know that people are super aware that it exists.
I really appreciate you saying that. And we have been working this summer in the Department of Student Services, and a lot of other departments are partnering with Michael Vaughn and communications to make sure that we're updating our website and making our connections easier for our families. That currently goes through, you need to look by department in student services, or you can look under families and community. However, we know that that's not always the way that families go when they have a need. And so I think that's something that we could take into consideration, work with Michael and with communications about how we can make sure we get the word out better. Thank you. That's great information, because we moved our focus towards the website as a big picture piece that we need to tighten up and make some changes. And then we also could do some other communication too. So
Yeah, currently it's through members of the student services team, classroom teacher, resource teacher. So you're right, I mean, from the, to spread it far and wide, that's a hard way to do. Just through each individual championing that along. So I like
Correct.
that, your question, and that continuing to broaden that reach for us.
Outside of the fact that it looks like referral GPS can be utilized from community members, their parents, families, anonymously. With regards to the district utilizing it, how does the district utilizing it differ in referral GPS to the county service of IRIS?
Also a great question. Thank you. So Iris and also Beacon, which is another tool from the state of Illinois. Those are other navigation systems that aren't really, I would say, dissimilar, but they do have a different reach. Referral GPS is focused very intentionally on more local resources, and both Iris and while they have local resources through Iris and Beacon, they also span a greater geographical area. So we do see this as two different helpful resources and tools and would like to continue to be able to offer both. Going back to mentioning our website, when we are making sure that both Iris and Referral GPS are there as a resource for families if they go to that. So we could think about that in the broader communication as well.
This is an annual fee.
Correct.
Is there any other governmental organization or public that could share the service? Could the public library? It seems to me this might be a service that we're kind of isolated. It's just for families. It's just people who get on our website. Is that correct? We have to be.
Yes.
referred.
Yes, and oftentimes, especially when you look at these searches that were done by our school district professionals, over 5,000 searches, that is perhaps a family has reached out to a social worker, or perhaps a social worker has concern for a student. It might be a school psychologist. And so that's when they're working and getting a release with families to support that family directly. So there's that that back and forth that happens, or again, through the website, as you suggested. I did this past year, step through a process with Mid-Valley Cooperative, and we looked at this product and also Iris and Beacon and some other, there was one other product that we looked at together to just do a little search in terms, I don't want to call it comprehensive, but it was more for us to increase our knowledge, make sure we were staying on top of what was out there, and also to try to understand the differences in scope. And talked about whether or not this should be something we do through the cooperative as opposed to just the single school district, which I think maybe goes along the lines of how you're thinking about it. We did not end up going that route. It seemed like the districts had different needs, but certainly something to take into consideration with another government entity. I hadn't gone down that path.
Are there other resources that offer comparable services? I think I may have even asked this last year when we reviewed this. Are there other services that are available? One thing I find just kind of off the top of my head is these resources wouldn't be available to a family seeking out this process or this particular company, Referral GPS. If an average family were to search for their resources, could they utilize them, or are these paid for services? I'm just trying to understand what the payment that we're making is.
So the way I would answer that is this. Yeah, first of all, yes, they would be available to a family who was seeking something out like this. And then there's different levels in terms of, as we know, in terms of what insurance is paying for, what somebody is having to pay out of pocket. There's actually a function within Referral GPS called Navigator that helps the family navigate all of that. So that's one option that a family can use. They do not have to use that. But the reason that this becomes important is that I would say in a couple of different layers. One is that mental health supports and mental health resources is just very complex in nature in terms of families being able to determine how to access for the wide variety of needs. It may range from a student
in their family having a concern about or an eating disorder to a student having severe depression or something that is comorbid and a couple of different things existing together. It may be in a moment in time when a family is truly in crisis and where do I turn to? What do I do next? How do I know where to begin? As opposed to going to the emergency room, which I certainly would encourage any family to do when they need to. I'm not trying to say that they shouldn't, but by the same token, we find that families in our community as well as beyond, we have a really great mental health coalition that comes together. And I know we take it very seriously in this community, in the greater community in St. Charles and in King County, to try to make sure that we're ready to be able to provide those resources when a family needs them. We have also such wonderful partners in our community with our private entities that when we have had crisis situations such as the death of a child in our community, I will tell you right now, our Tri-Cities, Riverview Counseling. I'm sorry that I even mentioned any single one because now I won't be able to mention them all. And truly, it is overwhelming in a wonderful way. They say, let us know where you need us to be and we will come support your students and families tomorrow. So this referral GPS it's one way that we can say, here's a collective resource and opportunity to be able to search what you need for that given issue or concern for your family in any moment of time. But it is not something that they couldn't find otherwise. It just really helps to pull it together and pool it together.
The other piece that I would add to that is resources really, ultimately, we're ensuring that our teams of support staff can access all this information because a lot of times we're in the midst of some type of crisis and our social workers, our psychologists, our counselors, whatever it is at there ready to be able to ensure that we're, as Laurel said, we're able to hand off and support a family as we do not do therapeutic. We are not a therapeutic site. We do not do that type of work. We are going to be able to make some decisions and to really work with families. And this tool allows us to be able to sit and say, family, here through this moment are a number of options for you as we work. So we're more that partner. We're kind of that go-between to say, let's hand off over here to this clinic, this support staff, this whatever, so that we have that cleanliness of the handoff. But I would also concur with what Laurel said. The navigation of this is incredibly complex. Generally speaking, when young people are in this crisis, there are multiple layers to it, and we need multiple ways to support them. So the tool, when I think about it, is that tool for us. Yes, can parents access it, but it's generally for us to be able to support that family, to support that student with these 4 or 5 different recommendations to one of our partners out there.
I've seen it in use as an educator in the district. I've used it, and I think it's worth every penny of the $35,000 that's in the budget. I think it helps to, I think anytime also you have a parent who wants to partner with the school and helping their child, that's a huge win. And if they've driven past and they've seen Riverside Therapy, right? But if they call Riverside, great place, but there tends to be an incredibly long waiting list. And so, yes, you can come. What's awesome about this program too, is it will say they are accepting new patients, right? Or they are not accepting new patients. Or for some parents, appointments have to be in the evenings, and it will say this organization has evening appointments available, or this one is daytime only. So you would have to leave work and pull your child from school. And so it gives you a wealth of information. And when a parent is overwhelmed, especially where I've seen it come up, right, is at parent teacher conferences, and a parent is like, okay, I want to help, but what do I do? to be able to say, here are ways you can help immediately. I think it honestly helps ensure that it happens because we take out that piece of mom and dad having to go home and fit the research and the phone calls and the waiting lists into their schedule. I think it helps parents to not give up because we're able to say, here's 3 places you can call right now. And when the parents want to partner with the school in that way and we make it easy for them, it helps those students to be successful at school and by association helps their peers also. So I think it's an incredible resource. One girl's opinion.
I think that's really good feedback too, like that you actually used it in practice. My question for you, Laurel, is how often is Referral GPS updated? I mean, you know how sometimes you go on like for your insurance and you click on it and it says accepting new patients and then you actually call and they say, oh, that we're not doing that. So how often is their database actually being updated, refreshed, new providers added, et cetera?
So my understanding is that, and I can follow up with Amit Thacker, who is the head CEO and founder actually of this company. But my understanding is that they do a thorough update annually, but that they are also doing real-time updates as they step through any given year, but a thorough annual to make sure, okay, we're really up to date. I don't want to pretend to understand sort of the complexity of that piece of all of the different layers that they have to update. So I can ask him a little bit more about the detail of that. I will say that he is a wealth of information himself and someone who came into this based on his own family experience and needs that he had. And he tells a very compelling story because it was actually professionals in a school district who really helped him make connections prior to Referral GPS, but helped him make connections and how he was able to find support that was necessary given some situational grief that was going on in his family at the time. So I would love to reach out and just do that as a follow-up.
I had one last quick.
Sure,
Thomas.
absolutely.
What has the feedback been from staff who utilize this program? What are they saying?
It's very positive from being able to feel like they're really empowering families and able to help families make that connection. They also are, the one thing that I have heard that is super supportive of our families who have socioeconomic needs, and that they're able to say, you will be able to look into this. The Care Navigator can help you to find those lower costs, which is very difficult to find. Also, we have individuals who, again, kind of going back to that main point that Paul was making, as we are trying always to help families with parameters of what the school district's mission is in terms of helping support mental health and what we have to help our families reach out for through our community resources, which, by the way, of course, is a support for a lifetime. That's not just the here and now. That's saying we have to help you navigate this so you're a student and you can do this following your education here in D303. And so that's another piece that I have heard from individuals to say that helps them define that, because as you can all imagine, in this type of giving profession, people want to do more. It's difficult to draw that line when you see a family and a student in need.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other comments? They come out to like more time, so we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Okay, next up, item 2F, diligent company contract. I think this one's you, Dr. Burton.
Yeah, this one's me. This is our board docs. Board docs was sold to the diligent community. So it is everything the board works through and how the community accesses their information through board docs with that purchase, and they're upgrading their services. You can see below for $13,400 for an annual cost. Currently, we pay $9,153 for that service, but we need either a board docs or something. So administration strongly recommends moving forward with this.
When we moved once before, we lost a lot of documentation.
See, this one's seamless because they are purchasing 4 docks. So all of our information materials, you are 100% correct. Going back into the archives, sometimes it's more challenging with the other tool that used to be used in our district.
So Dr. Gordon, will this be a fixed cost for any?
Yes.
What timeframe do you use?
Annual
Annual?
cost. Yes,
Yeah.
this is the cost for this year for the use of Diligent Community.
Is that a 1-year contract then with them?
I believe this is a 1-year contract for
Okay.
an. But
Okay.
yep. Back, yeah.
Board, anything else? Okay, this one, no brainer for consent. Okay, moving right along. Item 2G, annual approval of hazardous routes for the 25-26 school year, and welcome.
Thank you and good evening. It is that time of year where we bring to the board a reauthorization of the hazardous routes that allows parents that are under 1.5 miles but have to cross or go along a hazardous route to have transportation to and from school. We have gone through and made sure that all of those hazards are still hazards, and we've reevaluated every single one of them. We have one additional hazard to add to it. It is at Person Creek. When you are crossing the Burr from Boxwood Lane, that community there has been receiving transportation, but we are now making it official as an official hazard. It only affects about 20 students, but now we'll be able to claim them on the annual transportation claim.
So to clarify, you said nothing was removed from the list that was previously deemed as hazardous.
That's correct.
And then that singular addition. And then Dr. Gordon, I believe that after the beginning of the school year, we'll then be assessing a couple of other sites that are.
Correct. Correct.
So just to make that
Yep.
distinction, that those are 2 separate processes.
You nailed it.
Board, any questions, any feedback from Mr. Reeves? Okay, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We should have. Or something. Oh my gosh.
you're right.
How about that? Sorry about that. It's- A lot of that's my fault, right? Okay. Yeah. All right, everybody. So item 2H, Wasco softball lease renewal.
So many years, community unit, school district 303 has been, had a lease agreement with the Wasco Girls Fast Pitch Softball League. And on our property called Bear Hagee Field. This is a property that we own and is just over 7 acres. It's been a beneficial and positive agreement for both parties. And so we're looking to, reestablish a new lease agreement for them for the next 10 years. This lease agreement is very similar to ones used in the past, with some minor exception to adding some additional verbiage regarding maintenance responsibilities and expectations for the fields. So administration recommends that the board approve this lease agreement as presented.
Questions, comments? All right, sounds like another consent agenda. All right, moving on. Item 2I, East High School chiller replacement.
So the 2 chillers serving the Dunham wing of East High School are a little over 25 years old and at the end of their anticipated life. We did budget 1.3 million in our capital expenditure this year specifically for mechanical replacement projects. And we've targeted these 2 chillers as a priority for this next summer. They need to be replaced in advance of their failure due to their critical nature in the purpose and also the long lead times that come along with this type of equipment. So we worked alongside Wold architects and engineers to put together project manual and drawings, put the project out to bid, hosted a really well-attended pre-bid meeting on site, and we received 8 bids on July 17th. So the low bidder, Oak Brook Mechanical Services, was successfully vetted by Wold architects and engineers. So administration is recommending award for the 2026 East High School chiller replacement to Oak Brook Mechanical in $630,000. It would say that these did come in under budget when we anticipated, so we're excited about being able to utilize some of that savings there for other replacement projects.
I appreciate you always trying to get as many bids as we can. I think you said it bids right there. Do you recall what the range of the bids was, with this being the lowest bid? Just if you happen to recall. offhand.
Yeah, I don't remember the top one. It was about 100 so or more than this one here. This one was definitely a low outlier, and the next 3 or 4 of them were really tight spread of groupings for pricing.
Just ask because I like to show the diligence that you're doing to go out there and save as much money as we possibly can, especially for comparable work. So
Well, and I'll leave that on. Wolf also invites a lot of these contractors to them. They're really diligent about making sure that they are sending invitations to proper people to make sure that they're aware.
board, other comments, questions? Okay. Wonderful. That brings us to item 3A, future agenda items.
So next month, we'll be coming back with fiscal year 2026 budget. As Justin presented. That. We'll just be bringing that forward as we will have the hearing in September. At this point, that's the only item that we identified as something to bring up tonight. First, we'll talk about what we have to do going forward.
And Dr. Gordon, we have a clear update. Is that coming in the regular board meeting? I can't recall what you said about that.
Inter-district?
The clear.
Oh, the clearer one. Yes,
Communication.
we'll do that at the regular board meeting in August. Yep.
Well, first official meeting in the books, officially welcome, right? The nerves can go now. I'm still always nervous, so. That'll bring us to adjournment. Item 3B, adjournment at